Silence can be louder than screams when cruelty learns how to live comfortably beside flowers, laughter, and afternoon routines. The film opens without urgency. No warning. No framing that tells you how to feel. Just a sense of normalcy so complete it feels almost staged yet. Disturbingly real. A family picnics. Children play. A dog wanders lazily through sunlight. Somewhere nearby, a river flows with indifferent patience. Nothing appears wrong, and that is precisely the problem. Rudolph H.S. lives here. He is not introduced as a monster. He is introduced as a man who wakes up, dresses, and moves through his day with practiced efficiency. His home is spacious, carefully maintained, almost ideal. A garden blooms just beyond the window's roses. Vegetables, order. His wife, Hedwig, takes pride in it. This house is her achievement, her proof that she has built something lasting, something enviable. The camera does not rush to explain who they are or what they do. It observes. It waits. It lets routine unfold. Breakfast conversations drift by, mundane and affectionate. Children complain, laugh, misbehave. Servants move quietly, invisibly. Life continues with the smoothness of repetition. And beyond the wall always beyond the wall something else exists. You are not shown it. Not yet. Perhaps not ever, in the way you expect. Instead, you hear it, a distant hum. A low mechanical presence that never quite fades. Smoke occasionally drifts upward, like a weather pattern no one comments on. Sound design becomes the film is a conscience persistent, unavoidable but deliberately ignored by the people on screen. Rudolph H.S. is the commandant of Auschwitz, but the film does not announce this as a revelation. It assumes you already know, or, worse, it assumes it does not matter to his daily rhythm. His authority is felt not through violence, but through logistics, meetings, inspections, timetables. Efficiency. His work is described in abstractions, numbers, capacities, improvements. The language of management. The language that allows horror to pass through without leaving fingerprints. Hedwig, meanwhile, is building her dream. She walks the garden with pride, instructing servants, planning expansions. She imagines her children growing up here, rooted in this soil. The house is more than shelter, it is identity. It confirms her worth, her success, her belonging to something powerful. When guests arrive, she shows them around with satisfaction, as though presenting a model life. No one raises their voice. No one questions anything. This is not a film about visible cruelty. It is about insulation, about how carefully constructed comfort can become a barrier so thick that reality cannot penetrate it, even when it screams. The wall is everywhere. It divides the garden from the camp, yes, but it also divides thought from consequence, duty from morality, family from humanity. The wall is brick and ideology at once. And it works perfectly. Rudolph is calm, meticulous. He loves his children in the way men of his position often did, with distance softened by expectation. He corrects them gently. He provides. He believes in order, in structure, in a system where everything has a place, including people, especially people. At night, when the house quiets, the suns do not. Trains arrive. Doors slam. Engines throb. The soundtrack intrudes like an unwanted memory. Sometimes the children notice. Sometimes they ask questions. They are answered vaguely, reassured, redirected. Curiosity dissolves into routine. Hedwig does not ask questions at all. Her focus is inward, domestic, territorial. The world outside the wall exists only as an inconvenience or a resource. Clothing appears. She tries them on without hesitation. They fit. She admires herself. The origin of these objects is never discussed. It does not need to be. Silence has already done the work. There is a chilling intimacy to this refusal. The film does not accuse. It does not dramatize. It simply places you in proximity to denial and asks you to sit with it, to listen, to notice what is not being said, to feel the unease of recognizing how easily comfort adapts to atrocity when no one insists on naming it. Rudolph's professional life bleeds into his personal one in subtle ways. He talks about promotions, transfers, Auschwitz is not presented as a moral abyss, but as a post-one assignment among many. There are discussions about efficiency, about improvements. He is proud of his competence. It defines him. The machinery of death is never shown directly. Instead, its presence is encoded in rhythm, in background noise, in the way no one ever looks toward the smoke. This restraint forces a different kind of engagement. You are not allowed the distance of spectacle. There is no cathartic release, no dramatic confrontation that allows you to say, "This is evil, and I am separate from it." Instead, the film traps you in banality, in systems, in the terrifying realization that the greatest crimes often wear the face of routine. Hedwig hosts friends. They admire the house. They comment on how fortunate she is. Se agradece. There is laughter, cake, tea poured delicately into cups. The wall stands silent, doing its job. Occasionally, cracks appear. A servant pauses too long. A child stares at the smoke. A sound cuts through conversation sharply enough to unsettle the air. But these moments pass. They are absorbed back into normalcy. The system corrects itself. That is the most unsettling element of all, not the cruelty, but the stability. This household functions because everyone plays their role, because no one disrupts the narrative of domestic success, because comfort is defended as fiercely as ideology. Hedwig will later make this explicit. This house is hers. She has earned it. She will not leave it. The film watches her say this without judgment, without emphasis. It does not need to underline the horror. Her conviction does that on its own. Rudolph, too, begins to face changes, not moral ones, but logistical. There are hints of transfer, of movement within the hierarchy. His response is not fear or guilt, but calculation. What would this mean for the family? For the house? For the garden? Even here, Auschwitz is not mourned for its victims, but evaluated for its convenience. The audience is placed in an uncomfortable position. You know what this place represents. You know what is happening beyond the wall. And yet the film refuses to give you images that align with that knowledge. Instead, it forces you to experience dissonance, psychological gap between knowing and seeing, between awareness and action. This is not ignorance. This is choice. As part one progresses, the repetition becomes oppressive. Days blur together. The sounds persist. The smoke rises. Life continues. And slowly, an awareness settles in, not just about the characters, but about the mechanism itself, about how evil does not always announce itself, how it often arrives, dressed as responsibility, ambition, family life. The HS household is not chaotic. It is disciplined, ordered, proud. Proud. And that is what makes it unbearable. Near the end of this first movement, something subtle shifts, not in events, but in perception. The camera lingers longer. The sounds feel heavier. The distance between the garden and the wall feels thinner, as though the insulation is beginning to fail, not for the characters, but for us. You realize the film is not building toward a shocking act. It is building toward a realization that the most dangerous thing here is not hatred but indifference refined into routine, a life so carefully constructed that it no longer requires cruelty to function. It only requires silence. The film pauses here, suspended between domestic calm and moral collapse, asking a question it never speaks aloud. How close can horror live to comfort before they become indistinguishable? The shift does not arrive as an explosion. It arrives as a quiet recalibration, one that reveals how deeply the system has already succeeded. By now, the rhythms of the house feel familiar, almost dangerous in their familiarity. You recognize You know which moments will be ignored, which will be absorbed into the background like weather. The film has trained you to notice what the characters refuse to say, and then it begins to narrow its focus. Rudolph's professional world presses closer. Conversations grow more specific, not more emotional, more precise. Numbers replace euphemisms. Capacity, throughput, optimization. He speaks with pride, not cruelty. His language is clean, technical, sanitized. It carries no trace of suffering, because suffering has already been abstracted into process. This is where the film's central idea sharpens. Evil here does not need belief. He is driven by advancement, by recognition, by the quiet satisfaction of doing a job well. He's the kind of man systems love: reliable, obedient, efficient. The kind of man who never asks whether the machine should exist, only how smoothly it can run. At home, Hedwig doubles down. The possibility of relocation threatens her not morally, but materially. The thought of leaving this house unsettles her more than anything we have seen so far. Her reaction is visceral, defensive, almost panicked. She has fused her identity to this space. The garden is not just soil and flowers, it is proof that she belongs here. Refuses to concede that this home, this stolen paradise, could ever be temporary. When a conviction so absolute it feels immovable. And in that conviction, the film reveals how violence can be preserved not through rage, but through attachment. The house must remain untouched. Therefore, everything beyond the wall must remain unseen. The children grow older in this atmosphere. Their innocence is not shattered. They learn what matters by watching what their parents attend to. They learn what questions dissolve into silence, what sounds are normal, what smells are irrelevant. Their moral education is passive, ambient, and terrifyingly effective. No one teaches them cruelty, they teach them avoidance. At this midpoint, the film begins to gesture outward, not by showing more, but by contrasting less. The soundscape intensifies. Night scenes linger. The mechanical rhythms become harder to ignore. And yet, inside the house, life remains composed. Meals are eaten, sleep comes, days repeat. This contrast is no longer subtle. It is suffocating. You begin to feel the weight of what is missing. The absence becomes presence. The film is no longer asking you to observe denial, it is asking you to confront participation, not through action, but through proximity, through benefit, through inheritance. The HS family does not commit violence directly on screen. Profit from Italiano. They normalize it. They build a life on top of it. Rudolph's career advances. His competence is rewarded. He is consulted, admired, trusted. The system confirms him, reinforces him, elevates him, and in doing so, it absolves him, not legally but psychologically. If the structure praises you, how wrong can you be? This is the lie the film exposes with surgical precision. There is a moment nearly invisible where Rudolph's composer falters, not in guilt, in physical response. His body reacts before his conscience ever does. It is fleeting, ambiguous, but it matters, because it suggests something the film has resisted until now. That suppression has limits ebente most. Discipline systems leak, yet the leak is sealed just as quickly. Duty resumes. Composure returns. The machine continues. Hedwig, meanwhile, reaches her own form of climax, not a breakdown, but a declaration. She articulates her refusal to leave with such clarity that it lands like a confession. Cedo is not. Deny the suffering beyond the wall. She renders it irrelevant. Her needs, her comforts, her children, these are the only truths that matter in that moment. The film offers its most devastating insight. Moral collapse does not require denial of harm. It only requires prioritizing oneself above it. The final movements of the film begin to widen the lens not spatially, but temporally. You feel history pressing in, not as a lesson, but as a consequence. The routines you have been watching are not sustainable, not because the characters realize this, but because systems built on erasure eventually expose themselves. The film resists catharsis to the very end. There is no reckoning inside the narrative, no dramatic punishment, no awakening. Instead, there is a chilling sense of continuity. What has been established here, this model of living beside atrocity, does not end with these characters. It extends outward, forward, into structures we recognize. Then, the film makes its boldest move. It breaks the insulation. The sound, the rhythm, the visual language all shift subtly. Then unmistakably, time collapses. The distance between past and present thins. The implication is not stated, but it is unmistakable. This is not just about them. This is about legacy, about how systems remember themselves, about how violence leaves residue long after the perpetrators have gone home for dinner. You are no longer watching history, you are standing in its aftermath. The restraint that defined the film now becomes its final accusation. By refusing to show spectacle, it has denied you emotional escape. You cannot weep and move on. You cannot discharge the discomfort through shock. You are left instead with something heavier, a recognition that the most enduring horrors are not sustained by monsters. They are sustained by people who water gardens, tuck in children, and do their jobs well. As the film draws to a close, there is no final statement, only a lingering awareness, a sense that the wall still exists in different forms. That the question is no longer what they did, but how easily it was lived with. The silence returns. But it is no longer neutral. It carries everything that was ignored, absorbed, normalized. It asks you quietly, relentlessly, to consider note how evil looks when it rages, but how it sounds when it hums in the background. While life goes on, that a most unsettling realization settles in last. The zone of interest was never just a place. It was a choice.